sat at that candlelit table for nearly 4 hours. Every minute felt like a quiet slap, each tick of the clock digging deeper into my chest. People came and went. The waiters gave me that look, the one that says, "She's been stood up." I tried to smile through it, sipping lukewarm wine, pretending I still believed he'd show. But deep down, I already knew. The silence wasn't just loud, it was screaming. I thought, he must be planning something, right? Something romantic. Turns out, he planned it all, but not the way I imagined. When Mark finally walked in, I almost stood up with relief. But he wasn't alone. He brought his colleagues, laughing, clinking glasses, like I was just another chair at the table. No flowers, no apology, just a smirk. Then he said it, loud enough for everyone to hear. "See, told you she'd wait, like a faithful dog." I couldn't breathe. That moment shattered something in me. I wasn't his wife. I was a bet, joke. I was nothing to him, and that hit harder than anything he'd ever said before. I smiled. Yes, smiled. Because if I didn't, I was going to break right there in front of them, and I refused to give him that satisfaction. She cried in silence, but not that night. That night, she stared back. My silence was my answer. I paid for my untouched meal, stood up, and walked out. The wine still burning in my chest had nothing on the betrayal I'd just tasted. And the worst part? Nobody believed her. Everyone laughed along. They didn't see the woman crumbling inside. I walked home. He didn't follow. He didn't call. And in that moment, everything I thought we had unraveled. I replayed every dinner, every fake smile, every time I covered for him. He thought I would stay. That was his mistake. What he didn't know was that I'd already reached the end of my rope. He broke me first, and now something colder, stronger, sharper had taken root inside me. That night, something changed. And once it changes, it doesn't go back. When I got home, I poured myself a drink and opened his drawer. The one where he kept the cards. Platinum, unlimited, heavy in my hand, just like the weight in my chest. I wasn't thinking revenge. Not yet. I was thinking freedom, sanity, distance, space to breathe without his shadow looming over me. Stories of betrayal always start quietly, don't they? A missing call, a skipped dinner, then suddenly, you're a punchline at your own anniversary. He never saw it coming. The truth is, this wasn't about one night. It was a slow poison, and I had swallowed it for years. I gave up job offers, dreams, even friendships just to keep the peace. He said it was love. I now know it was control. I was deceived, and what hurt the most was realizing I let it happen. But that night, sitting alone on our bed with his card in hand, I realized I still had a choice. And choosing myself wasn't just an option. It was the only way out. I didn't cry that night, not even once. I packed a small bag, just the essentials. Passport, one black dress, red lipstick, the pair of heels I bought but never wore because he said they were too much. I left a note, nothing dramatic, just one sentence. "Don't wait up." It was my way of saying she finally left. My heart was pounding, but not from fear, from something unfamiliar, something close to hope. Every betrayal carries a hidden blessing. Mine came wrapped in cruelty. And when I stepped into that cab, card in hand, I wasn't running. I was reclaiming. I didn't know exactly where I was headed, but I knew where I wasn't staying, and that was enough for now. The air felt different. The silence no longer heavy. It was peaceful. It was mine. On the way to the airport, I stared out the window and whispered to myself, this is just the beginning. Not of pain, but of power. I wasn't looking back. The old me, the one who begged, who waited, who believed, she was gone. What was rising now was someone new, someone who'd learn how to stand alone, not as a victim, but as a woman with her own story. And the story was just getting good, because if he thought I would stay, he was about to learn a very expensive lesson. I didn't even pack a bag. I just grabbed his card and left. After sitting alone for 4 hours on what was supposed to be our anniversary dinner, something inside me snapped. My silence was my answer. I didn't scream. I didn't cry in front of them. But I cried in silence the moment I stepped out of that restaurant. The way he laughed at me, like I was nothing to him, shattered something sacred. It wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation, planned and served cold in public. He thought I would stay, that I'd wait again tomorrow, and the day after, like a loyal shadow that never asks for more. But I was done being that version of myself. I looked up at the sky, took a deep breath, and hailed a cab. No destination in mind, just away. Somewhere he wouldn't think I'd go. Somewhere he never saw coming. I remembered his card was in my bag, and for the first time in years, I felt something that wasn't pain. It was bold. It was reckless. It was mine. When the cab driver asked, "Where to?" I whispered, "The airport." I didn't even know which flight I wanted. I just knew I had to leave before I changed my mind. Inside the terminal, I walked straight to the international desk and said one word, Paris. I could barely breathe as I handed over his platinum card. The attendant smiled. First class. Departure in 2 hours. No turning back now. It wasn't about running. It was about reclaiming the version of me he buried. Sitting in that lounge, sipping champagne, I felt a strange mix of power and grief. I wasn't used to treating myself like I mattered. That seat in first class wasn't just leather and space. It was liberation. I imagined his face when he checked the transaction. Let him wonder. Let him spiral. He broke me first, so I showed him the proof. My freedom. The best kind of revenge doesn't come with yelling. It comes wrapped in silence and wrapped in warm croissants over the Atlantic. I watched the lights of the city disappear beneath the clouds. My ring felt heavy, so I took it off and left it in the seat pocket, like shedding a skin I'd outgrown. The stewardess asked if I was celebrating something. I said, yes, my life. She didn't ask more. She just nodded, like she somehow knew the weight of what I was carrying. The old me might have apologized. The new me just smiled. During the flight, memories came in waves. I found the messages 6 months ago, texts between him and his assistant, giggling about my naivety. He betrayed me, but I was deceived long before that night. I'd convinced myself he'd change, that my patience would somehow earn me love. But all I got in return was condescension. He once said, "No one else would put up with you," and I believed him, until I didn't. Paris greeted me like an old friend. It smelled like hope, cobblestones, fresh bread, and a second chance. I checked into a boutique hotel with a velvet key and windows that opened to the Eiffel Tower. I didn't cry that night. I slept. Deep, unshaken sleep. Like my body finally knew I was safe. She finally left. The woman who waited. And the woman who arrived. She was ready. I woke up with no plans, and for the first time that felt exciting instead of terrifying. I wandered the streets in a linen dress and flats that didn't match. I didn't care. A man offered me coffee, and I said yes, not because I needed company, but because I wanted to remember how yes could feel. I tasted freedom in tiny sips and buttery bites. I looked in mirrors and recognized someone I missed. Revenge wasn't loud. It was delicious, served slowly and with style. He texted once, "Where are you?" I didn't answer. I let my silence be my answer, because if I told him, he'd come. And this version of me, the one rebuilding, the one learning how to love herself, she didn't need him anymore. This wasn't a game. It was a rebirth. And as I stared at the Seine from a tiny bridge, I felt it in my bones. This is where the real story begins. Paris didn't just feel like a new city. It felt like the life I was supposed to live before everything got derailed. I'd barely unpacked my suitcase when I reached out to Elise, a dear friend from culinary school who'd always believed in me. We hadn't spoken in years, but when she saw my name flash on her screen, her voice cracked with excitement. We met at a quiet cafe near Montmartre, and the moment I saw her face, I felt something in me start to thaw. It was the first time in forever someone looked at me and didn't see a wife, or an accessory, but a woman with fire. I didn't even realize how much I'd missed being seen. Over warm croissants and café au lait, we caught up like no time had passed. But then, something shifted. Elise hesitated. Her eyes dropped for a second. And then she said the words that made my heart sink. "Julia, I thought you just didn't want to come. I emailed you twice about that Michelin stage position in Nice." My stomach turned. I never got those messages. Not a single one. She pulled out her phone, showed me the threads, my name, my email, blocked. He blocked me from my own future, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. I was deceived for years. He broke me first when he silenced my voice and clipped my wings. It wasn't just emotional manipulation. This was sabotage. She cried in silence all those nights, and I had become her, me. He thought I would stay forever in that role, smiling at dinner parties, pretending I didn't notice how dim my light had grown. He never saw it coming. That one day I'd wake up and remember who I was before the betrayal. But now, with Elise confirming everything, the truth came out. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't forgotten. I was intercepted. We walked the Seine that afternoon, and she reminded me of a recipe we created in school. Roasted peach tartlets with lavender honey. We used to dream of opening a patisserie together. That memory struck something deep. That version of me wasn't gone. She was just buried beneath layers of compromise and gaslighting. So I asked her to help me find her again. I told Elise I wanted back in. Not just into food, but into my story. She smiled and said, "Then let's cook." I stayed with Elise for a few days while we made a list. I wanted my hands to remember the rhythm of dough, the scent of thyme on my fingers, the feel of heat rising from the oven like applause. I signed up for a 2-week immersion at a local kitchen near the Latin Quarter. Nothing fancy, just raw, real, passionate chefs. It felt like coming home. The first night I plated a duck confit, I cried. Not because it was perfect, but because I did it. With no mark, no permission, no apology. My silence was my answer. I didn't owe him an explanation. During a wine pairing class, I met an editor from a French food blog. She loved my ideas, my palate, My voice. She asked if I'd ever thought of writing. I hadn't. Not really. But maybe that was because he made sure I never believed I could. That night, I opened a blank Word doc and typed 5 words. The Runaway Chef, Day 1. It wasn't just a blog. It was my confession, my comeback, my rebellion. And yes, I used his card to pay for the domain, a tiny taste of revenge, and it was delicious. Every post was a chapter in my resurrection. I wrote about the bet, about the betrayal, about the tartlets Elise and I recreated in her kitchen, lavender and all. Women started messaging me. He betrayed me too. I was nothing to him. She finally left, and I realized I wasn't alone. We were a community of broken women learning how to serve ourselves for once. It felt powerful, sacred even. I walked by a mirror one night after baking late into the evening. For the first time in years, I didn't look tired or small or unsure. I looked like a woman rebuilding herself from scratch, flour in her hair, wine in her hand, and purpose in her eyes. I thought of him, back in our sterile house, maybe wondering where I went, maybe even missing me. But I smiled, because this life, he'll never get a taste of it again. He begged her to come back. Let him. I found the messages. I saw the proof. And still, he thought I would stay. She planned it all. But now I'm planning something greater. This isn't just healing, it's reinvention. And what's coming next? Well, it starts with a knife and a dream. There's something sacred about fire and steel. In the kitchen, they don't lie. You either show up fully or you get burned. That's exactly why I threw myself into the craft. I needed something real, something I could control. Enrolling in a prestigious workshop in Le Marais felt intimidating at first, but also exhilarating. The first day, the head chef barked instructions in rapid French, and I just nodded, heart pounding. But guess what? I didn't freeze. I moved. I sliced. I sautéed. I plated. And for the first time in forever, I felt powerful. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone, not even to him. It was about feeling the weight of the knife in my hand and knowing I wasn't helpless anymore. He broke me first, yes, but I was done living in that narrative. He thought I would stay stuck in his shadow, paralyzed by betrayal and humiliation. But each perfect julienne, each golden crust I pulled from the oven, told a different story, one where she finally left and found herself. Working in a small bistro at night pushed me even harder. It wasn't glamorous. I cleaned pans, hauled crates, burned my arms on hot trays, but every task was mine. Nobody could take it away or twist it against me. The customers didn't care about my past. They cared about flavor. And when they smiled at their plates, I felt seen in a new way, not as the woman who was deceived, but as someone creating something worth tasting. I started sharing more on my blog, The Runaway Chef. Recipes? Yes, but also reflections. I wrote about grief, betrayal, healing, and the quiet revenge of becoming untouchable. The comments flooded in, women whispering their truths. She cried in silence. He never saw it coming. My silence was my answer. We weren't alone. We were building something together, dish by dish, post by post. A revolution simmering behind kitchen doors. Elise helped me organize pop-up dinners. Intimate nights where I cooked 5-course meals and read journal entries in between. I exposed him through stories, not in anger, but in clarity. People cried, they clapped, they hugged me after. That was my new currency. Truth served warm. And each time I told my story, the poison he left behind lost a little more power. The truth came out, and it was delicious. One night, after a particularly emotional event, Elise pulled me aside. "Do you realize what you're doing?" she asked. "You're giving people permission to rise." That hit hard. I wasn't just healing. I was teaching others how to fight differently, not with fists or fury, but with flavor and fire. And, in that moment, I knew I didn't need to get back at him. I just needed to get back to me. Still, revenge has many flavors. And mine? It was layered, like a perfect millefeuille, sweet, sharp, and built with intention. I shared one post that went viral, a side-by-side photo, me in that anniversary dress alone at the restaurant, and me now, plating duck à l'orange in Paris. The caption read, "He humiliated me, but I plated my pain." It was raw, it was bold, and oh, it hit. He begged her to come back. Of course he did. Men like him always do. After the damage, after the proof. So I showed him the proof, not in a courtroom, not in a screaming match, but in every accolade, every follower, every reservation under my name. That was my answer, and I didn't even need to say a word. By then, I had something stronger than closure. I had purpose. My hands were steady, my mind clear. I wasn't chasing anything anymore. I was creating it. And as the bistro whispered with stories of betrayal and resilience, I knew the next chapter was coming. One with brighter lights, louder applause, and bigger truths waiting to be unveiled. It started with a letter, an old, unopened envelope tucked inside one of Mark's forgotten boxes that arrived during the divorce inventory. It was addressed to me, dated 3 years ago, from a Michelin-starred restaurant in Lyon. I stared at it, heart pounding. I opened it with shaking hands and read the offer that could have changed everything, except I never received it. He had intercepted my future, and now the truth came out. I found the messages next. Emails between Mark and a recruiter discussing how it's better for Julia to focus on home life. My name reduced to a liability in his career narrative. That's when it all snapped into focus. Every lost opportunity, every forgotten callback, every time he said I was nothing to him. It wasn't fate. It was control. Cold, calculated control. And guess what? She planned it all, but not me, him. He betrayed me, and not just in marriage. He betrayed my ambition, my talent, my dreams. When people think of betrayal, they imagine another woman in the picture. But this was deeper. It was the theft of my identity. He broke me first, and he did it quietly, like a whisper behind closed doors. And for years I thought I was the one failing, that I wasn't trying hard enough, dreaming big enough. Turns out, I was just being deceived. I forwarded the emails to my lawyer, attached with a simple note, so I showed him the proof. It wasn't about winning anymore. It was about being seen. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I was a woman buried under someone else's insecurity, and now I was done digging myself out. My silence was my answer, until I needed to roar. And in that courtroom, my voice didn't shake. The divorce finalized with clean lines, no apologies, no teary-eyed farewells, just signatures and silence. He thought I would stay. He assumed I'd crawl back, grateful for scraps. But she finally left, and this time for good. Not in anger, but in clarity. And clarity is a weapon most people aren't ready for, especially narcissists used to dancing in shadows. That same week, I received an offer to write a column in a major food magazine. Not just recipes, stories. Stories of betrayal. Stories of women reclaiming their passion. The editor said my blog felt like fire with flavor. I accepted immediately. This was my voice, sharpened by pain, sweetened by survival. I wasn't just cooking anymore. I was documenting rebirth. Each article became a mini liberation. I told the world what happened, not to shame him, but to liberate others. I exposed him not to destroy his name, but to heal mine. That's what people don't understand about women who rise. We don't do it out of spite. We do it to breathe again. And with each word, each published piece, I felt myself exhale. He begged her to come back. Of course he did. A text, then a call, then flowers sent to the bistro as if roses could erase years. I laughed, not cruelly, just peacefully, because the woman he left, she was gone, and the woman I had become, she'd never even opened the door. She exposed him, but more importantly, she found herself. It wasn't revenge, it was revelation, the kind that breaks chains without needing noise. I stopped checking his social media. I stopped wondering what he told his friends. I had no interest in the spin. I had the truth, and it wasn't just liberating, it was profitable. My pain had become purpose, and purpose pays in peace. But even with all that, something was still calling me, something deeper than the spotlight, bigger than the column, stronger than the applause, a whisper I hadn't yet followed, one that would lead me to a life I didn't even know was waiting. I didn't wake up one day completely healed. Healing came in layers, slow, messy, and quiet. It started with small things, like the smell of fresh croissants from the corner boulangerie, or the laughter of strangers on a cafe terrace. I was no longer rushing to meet someone else's expectations. I walked slower, breathed deeper. Paris didn't fix me, but it reminded me who I was before he broke me. There was a morning I remember clearly. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman I hadn't met in years. Her eyes didn't dart with fear. Her smile didn't tremble. She looked like someone who had survived a war and decided to plant a garden. That was the moment I knew. She finally left the past behind. Not because it didn't matter, but because it no longer controlled her. I moved into a tiny apartment in Montmartre. It had creaky floors and too much sunlight, exactly what I needed. I spent evenings cooking barefoot with jazz playing in the background, sipping wine like time owed me something. The blog kept growing. Readers messaged me daily, saying my story felt like their story. She cried in silence, one woman wrote, but now she's learning to sing. I knew exactly what she meant. In that new rhythm, I was reborn, not reinvented, rediscovered. Everything I thought I lost had been buried, not destroyed. My creativity returned, fierce and untamed. Recipes became love letters. Words flowed like wine. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. And this time, I wasn't asking anyone for permission. I had become the version of myself I once only dreamed of. It still hit me sometimes, randomly. A scent, a song, a memory of when I was nothing to him. But I no longer felt anger, just distance, like watching an old film where the ending changes. I used to think he broke me first, But now I see he just revealed where I needed to grow stronger. And oh, how I did, with flour on my hands and fire in my chest. I got invited to speak at a culinary conference. Me, the same woman who once sat in silence while he mocked my dreams. Standing on that stage, I shared my story, not just of betrayal, but of resilience. I spoke about the power of starting over, about how the truth came out, and with it, a woman no longer willing to dim herself for anyone's comfort. My friendships deepened, too. Real connections, no masks. Elise became my soul sister in Paris, always reminding me that what we went through wasn't weakness, but proof of endurance. We toasted to every new milestone, each dish I created, each article I published, each night I slept peacefully without replaying the pain. These were the markers of a life rebuilt. I stopped checking if he had moved on, because I had, not just geographically, but spiritually. There's a peace that comes when you realize you're no longer waiting for closure. My silence was my answer, and in that silence, joy grew wild and unfiltered. I wasn't haunted anymore. I was home, not in a place, in myself, and it wasn't perfect. Life never is, but I had crafted something real, something sacred, a life where my voice mattered, where revenge looked more like glowing skin and fulfilled dreams than bitterness or drama. I didn't need to ruin him, I just needed to rise. And I did, every damn day, with butter, basil, and belief. But even with a full heart and a life reborn, one question lingered in the background, one dream still whispering to me when the lights went out and the city fell asleep, a whisper I could no longer ignore. The text came in at 2:37 a.m., a familiar number, one I'd deleted 100 times but still recognized instantly. I miss you. Please call me. I stared at the screen, my heart completely still, no flutters, no heat in my cheeks, just silence. That same silence I once drowned in when he betrayed me, but now it was my protection, my power. My silence was my answer. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my window and let the breeze in, carrying the scent of jasmine and possibility. The woman I am now wouldn't even recognize the one who sat through anniversaries alone, hoping he'd finally see her. He thought I would stay. He never imagined I'd go further than just leaving. He never imagined I'd rise, but he never saw it coming. There's something beautiful about living a life you don't have to explain. I cook because it fills my soul. I write because my story matters. I laugh louder now, love slower, dream bigger. I stopped needing closure from him the moment I found the messages. That was the day I realized he wasn't confused. He was calculated, and she planned it all, but so did I. My revenge just took a different form. I've learned that betrayal doesn't define you. It reveals you. It forces you to choose, shrink or expand. I chose to expand, to fill every room I enter, to walk with softness and strength, and to leave traces of resilience wherever I go. When people ask what happened between us, I just say, he broke me first, but I rebuilt better. They always pause, then nod. They understand. Sometimes I still hear stories of betrayal from strangers, friends, even readers, and every time, I listen closely, because there's something sacred in surviving what tried to destroy you. There's wisdom in the wreckage, and if you sit long enough in your own truth, the truth comes out, and it will set you free. Not instantly, not easily, but fully. I no longer fantasize about him seeing me on some glamorous magazine cover and regretting everything. I don't need him to beg me to come back. His absence no longer aches. It teaches. It reminds me how far I've come from being nothing to him, because now I'm everything to myself. That's more than enough. I wrote a final post on my blog last week about letting go, about how sometimes the best closure is no closure at all. She exposed him not with words, but with peace. And when she was captured in pain, she still chose to walk forward barefoot and broken. That's not weakness. That's the fiercest form of power there is. I think about the girl who once curled up on the bathroom floor, whispering apologies to herself for being too emotional or too much. I wish she knew that one day her pain would become purpose, that nobody believed her when she said she'd leave, but she did, that every tear shed in silence would water the soil for her rebirth. And even now, with a full life and healed heart, I still carry the lesson close. You don't have to scream to be heard. Sometimes, she cried in silence, and the world eventually leaned in to listen. And just as I thought my story had reached its final page, something unexpected happened. One last twist, waiting quietly around the corner,